Good afternoon. This is your Pan-African show called Afreeqa with your host Seifu. Today, we've gotten a great and a special guest for you. A guest that's widely recognized as the legitimate heir of the legendary Thomas Sankara, Kemi Seba. He's the president of the Pan-African Emergencies. It's an NGO. Welcome to our studio.
Be upon to you, this sister. That's a blessing for me to be here.
Thank you, thank you. Can you please share with us your upbringing, urban or rural, how you grew up?
I was born in France, and I grew up in the suburb of Paris. Before I came in Paris and its region, I was in some part of France where there was no black people. Ooh. I was the only black with my family. I feel that the racism I felt when I was a child put me on the road of the black consciousness. And for this reason, I will never think enough the enemy of our people. Because the enemy of our people give us the possibility to take charge about our destiny.
And they give you strength.
Definitely. And I think that for some reason, a lot of them are part of the equation of my destiny. I will say that like that, with my bad English.
No problem. You know, he speaks French, so he's going to try and speak English with us today. And I truly appreciate that you're even trying. But in case we do have an issue, we do have Hortense.
Great translator. The greatest.
Yes. She was, when I first started this TV show, she was my first guest.
Okay.
How did you manage to visit Egypt at the age of 20? Were you aware of Sheikh Anta Diop and his works at that age?
In fact, I started my love story with the black consciousness when I was 18. I start at the beginning. It's important to put that in one order. I started with the Nation of Islam during a trip in Los Angeles in 1999. And after I heard a speech of one minister of this organization, I said to myself that I want to dedicate my life to defend my people, be a soldier of my people, and be a voice. But I knew that it was necessary to study first, not study white history, but study black history first. I knew that it was necessary for me to train myself to speak, because at the beginning was the word and the voice and the verb. And after a process, I stayed in the Nation of Islam approximately 2 years, less than 2 years. And after a clash with the local responsible of the Nation of Islam in France at this period of time, I decided to cut off with the Nation of Islam, and I started to study Sheikh Anta Diop. And it was a particular situation for me because I knew through the Nation of Islam that Egypt was a black nation and was the roots of the black nation. I learned that, not with Sheikh Anta at the beginning, but with the teaching of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad. But after I cut off with this organization, when I studied carefully the teaching of Sheikh Anta Diop, I understood that, wow, our people is so strong and great. And I take the opportunity to travel with my father because my father was a doctor. And each time he had some congress about his specialty, you know, oncology. In many cities, Los Angeles, it was an opportunity because he had a congress about oncology. I think Egypt, not sure, but I think it was the same thing. And I took this opportunity to travel in Egypt. And after this trip, and with the book of Sheikh Anta Diop on my hands, and I decided to change my name, keep the meaning of this name, because the meaning of my civil name is Stelio, who means star. Not star in the way of famous, but in the way of light in my mind. That was the meaning that my parents wanted to give me. And I changed that in Seba, in Medunecher, means star in the same way.
Okay.
So it was a translation from Stelio to Seba. And Kemi in Medunecea means black. So Stelio is an Italian name. Seba is an African name. And so I took Kemi Seba. And I remember I was in my room. I was a very, very young adult. And I put this name on the wall of my room. And I say, yeah, now I will keep this name. It will become my name. And that's my name now.
That's your name now.
Yeah.
Beautiful. So what is it Tribuka or Tribuka?
Cat tribe.
Oh.
Cat tribe. It was a continuation of the process, coming back to the roots. Okay. And Cat tribe was an organization that I decided to found by myself with all the knowledge I had at this period of time. I had only 24 years, but I was able to read the hieroglyph, you know. I was able to learn about the Medu nature, and I was able to have a global knowledge of our history. I was very young, but I had a lot of knowledge about it, but I was very, you know, when you are a young black man, I was thug. I was a thug. Like, yeah, Tupac was for me a kind of big brother, and I was on this path, but in political way. And I tried to take good things from my experience in Nation of Islam. So in the way of paramilitary style of the organization, discipline inside the organization. Each week, each Sunday, we had a meeting with our brother and sister in the suburb of Paris, of the street of Paris. And each time there was people who attacked black people, our organization, we took our courage and we decided to go in the direction of our enemy. And we beat them at this period of time. Now I think that I was a teenager in the political life, but I think it was necessary. Because black people in the French-speaking world, and for be honest, in the global war and in the global world, black people are not enough respected. So we need to have some time, some kind of, sometimes we have to shock them. Yeah. I think it was necessary.
Wake them up.
So yeah, and it was our way at this period of time. More fists than words, but in some time we had good words too. But we were very radical because it was way of expression at this period of time. And I was put in jail by Sarkozy in 2007, first time for my political world, for our political activity. Because they love to have and to see black brother and sister, black brother first when they are musician, rapper, football player. Yes, I love black people. But when they start to see black men and black women who's thinking about his own destiny, who's thinking about the self-determination, who's thinking about his own culture, who don't want to be manipulated by anybody, he become to be, or she become to be, a problem.
Is there a difference between Francophone Africa and Anglophone Africa in their respective approaches to Pan-Africanism?
Definitely, because we are not at the same level of process. And definitely because the colonization wasn't the same. In the Anglophone Africa, the colonization was very different. There was the indirect rules. What does it mean? That means that colonizer didn't want it to change the minds of the brother and sister in English-speaking Africa. But in French-speaking Africa, colonizer changed the mind. He says that you are a citizen of a white man world. You understand, you belong to this world, but you are at the bottom, definitely. But in English-speaking Africa, it was colonization, hard colonization, of course. But they didn't want it to destroy the African tradition, the African culture, the African knowledge. So for this reason, it was more easy for the English-speaking Africa to take charge about destiny than it was, and it is, in French-speaking Africa. And that's for this reason, in my mind, maybe it's a mistake, but that's for this reason that in 21st century, it's only now that the ultimate step of the process of self-determination and decolonization take part in French-speaking Africa. That's because the wake-up was longer than in English-speaking Africa, because the brainwashing in French-speaking Africa is at a level you can't imagine.
So, in your Pan-African lectures around the various African universities, did you notice a difference in the receptivity of the students over the years?
For me, my lecture in African University was part of the process of social engineering. One of my favorite movies in my life is Inception with Leonardo DiCaprio. His job is to put idea in the brain of some people and try to change his destiny. My job and the job of my staff is to make a black inception, Pan-African inception, put self-determination idea in the brain of the black youth, not only in the black French-speaking world, but in global black world. And I think that this period of time, because I start to give lecture in African University in West Africa, there is approximately now 12 years. Wow. And definitely, if there is some kind of, you can call it like that, revolution in French-speaking Africa now, I think that the roots of it, one of the roots, because there is multiple roots, but one of the most important roots was this work in this African university, because the black youth in university naturally are involved in the way of Pan-Africanists, because there is different nationality, African nationality, they are connected. So they live Pan-Africanism naturally, but they don't know how to organize that. And I think that after the death of our elder leader in Pan-Africanism, there was, and after the victory of the capitalism upon the communism and the end of the Cold War, I think that the globalization and the neoliberalism delayed the political aspects. I feel that globalization delayed the political aspect of Pan-Africanism. It just let the cultural aspect, dashiki and something like that, but the process of self-determination was delayed. Because globalization is obsession is to destroy the roots and the will to take charge of the destiny for the people, you know? And give lecture in African University was a tremendous experience for me. You
mentioned that there was an elder died.
Yeah.
Who was that elder?
When I speak about elders...
You were talking about...
Yeah, I speak about Winnie Mandela. I speak about Thomas Sankara. I speak about Patrice Lumumba, Amilcar Cabral, Haile Selassie, His Majesty. For be sure, all these people, Marcus Mosiah Garvey, gave us the will to continue the legacy.
When and why did you form your NGO, Pan-Africanist Emergencies?
It was with my best friend in his life, my assistant, right hand, and advisor when he's wise. When he's wise. Eric Jeruti, I was just released from jail, second time in my life, after the French government tried to keep me off. I came back in Africa, there is now 12 years. And when I came back in Africa, French government said, that's okay, now we will not disturb us again with black activities. We came back in this village in Africa, they will not have problem. So they decided to let me, it was like I came in retreat, you know. I say, believe that's good for me. And when I start to become journalist in Senegal, in Africa, in one of the most famous talk shows at this period of time, in the 2S TV, with one of the most well-known television in French-speaking Africa. I was a geopolitical journalist and polemist, and I had a lot of debates with ministers, with head of states, with artists, and something like that each Saturday. And that gave me a lot of popularity. And that gave me the possibility to add more lecture in university and to be linked with many countries who are against Western imperialism. In Middle East, in South America, in East Europe, and something like that. And at this time, I was in probation because I had a clash with a journalist very close to the French government who make a very bad report and made a propaganda against me. And when I saw him in the street, I was like that when I was more younger. I beat him. And the French authority waits this opportunity to keep me in jail. But many people said that he started to push me, and I answered back more strongly. So I was in probatory. But when I decided to come back in Africa, I didn't ask to French government, please, can I come back in Africa? I said, I came back, I don't care about you, you're not my master. But they let me at the beginning. But when I became famous in French-speaking Africa, and they see me in Iran, they see me in Venezuela, they see me and say, hey, this former young black radical activist become famous in French-speaking black world, that's no good. So when I came back for a lecture and conference about my second book, which just was released, the police infiltrates the conference, the meeting, and when I came out the meeting, they put me in jail, in isolation. And when I was released from jail, I had a conversation with my brother, my best friend, Harry Jeuti. I will never thank God enough to have this brother in my life. That's one of the most beautiful stories in my life, definitely. Each time I am in jail, that doesn't mean that it's good to be in jail. But for me, it's a period of time when I can be more connected with God. I talk to God each second. I'm fundamentalist of God. More in jail than outside, of course, but God gave me more inspiration in jail. And I said to myself, cat tribe was forbidden by French government, long years ago. And I was thinking about all the mistakes, strategical mistake of cat tribe, and all the good aspects of cat tribe. And I wanted to create an organization more wise strategically, more connected to the black world, where I could put tradition in this organization, ideology, in the same way my geopolitical connection everywhere. And I decided that we will create an NGO, because NGO, when you say your organization is a political party, the black African dictator say, oh, that's a problem. But when you call your political organization NGO, you can take advance about them. You understand? So our organization is a political party, 100%. But we labeled this organization NGO, Pan-African Emergency. Why Pan-African Emergency? Because for me, our people is healed. All of us, even me, of course. But there is different level of illness. And I feel that the best medicine to cure our people is Pan-Africanism. So, because I feel that we are emergency room doctors, okay, and our people is suffering. So we call our NGO Pan-Africanist Emergency. And it becomes, in French-speaking world, I think, one of the most important black organizations today. We have local chapters in the majority of French-speaking Africa, in diaspora too, in French-speaking Caribbean, since few time in South America now. And at the beginning it was in the French-speaking Africa, but now we try to enlarge the vision because our people is everywhere. We were in Colombia there is a few weeks. I was saddened and impacted about the situation of our people.
In Latin America?
In Latin America. You know, in Colombia, we made 3 cities. Bogota, the capital. In Bogota, majority of white people, even majority of Shakira, and some Latino, of course, some indigenous people, and black people. But as Ivan Van Satima said, black people was indigenous too, because
exactly.
He had a great book. We were here before Christopher Columbus. Yeah. And the second city we made was Medellin. When I was young, when we heard about that was drug, criminality, something like that. But it was different in the infrastructure way. It was less well structured than in Bogota. And after we made the third city, was the black ghetto, one of the most important black ghetto in Colombia. Majority of the population, 90% was black. Quibdó. And in Quibdó, there was no drinkable water. There was no electricity, or lot of cut of electricity. And I will not lie, I was crying. I take a part, I made myself a part of the group, and I was deeply disturbed by the situation. And I said to myself, everywhere our people is, we are at war. That's not a joke. That's not a joke. My father, political master, Dr. Khalid Mohammed said, everywhere black people is, there is a war against him. And if you don't take seriously the situation, we will be not destroyed because we are the people of God, but it will be a long nightmare. So we need to take charge. And I try to spread the energy and the Pan-Africanism in this area, and they were very receptive about the situation. And we will come back in October in Colombia. It was a love at first sight with my people in this area, everywhere, but Colombia, it was particular because when there is problem of drinkable water in Africa, Western nations say, yeah, that's because your leader don't take seriously charge about your situation. You are responsible. I say, okay. But in Colombia, there is one central government. Each region needs to be protected by this government. But where there is black people, they don't take care about it. So this is a war. If we don't say and recognize the situation, we will not go anywhere.
I agree. I agree. Can you say a few things about the Francophone CFA?
Franc CFA, in English it will be very difficult for be clear, but I will try to do my best. CFA franc is an economical process. We started during the period of colonization. Yeah. And for be more precise, in 1945, at the end of the Second World War, so-called World War, but it was an inter-ethnic war of white people, for be honest. And French decided to organize this economical system to have benefit, to take advantage and to have benefit inside its colony. So French oligarchy could be able to take all our resources and import all his production. In English is no good.
You can do it in French.
Donc le système du franc CFA est un système qui a été organisé en 1945, au sortir de la Seconde Guerre mondiale. Et l'élite française a créé ce système pour avoir la possibilité déjà de pouvoir importer toutes nos ressources minières, qu'il y ait un quelconque contrôle de quiconque lorsque ces ressources étaient volées, de 1. C'est un système qui a été créé aussi pour que les entreprises françaises puissent commercer et puissent faire leur business dans cette région d'Afrique de la zone franc, d'accord, sans qu'il y ait un quelconque contrôle. Et lorsqu'il y a eu l'apparition ensuite de l'euro, il y a eu ce que l'on appelle un taux de change fixe, un arrimage du franc CFA à l'euro, ce qui bénéficie aux entreprises françaises, mais ce qui crée un gros problème pour les entreprises africaines parce que l'euro est une monnaie beaucoup trop forte pour nos économies locales. Et cela anéantit tout processus de compétitivité.
The CFA system originated in 1945 at the end of the Second World War. It was established for the French elite, or by the French elite, firstly, so that they could import all of our mineral resources with no oversight at all. So they were stealing our resources. And secondly, it was also for the French companies to be able to trade and do business in the Francophone region with absolutely no oversight or control. And when the euro arrived, it was pegged, conversion rate, was pegged to the CFA. So there's this fixed conversion rate, which profits the French companies, but is problematic for local companies and for our economies because it makes it impossible for us to compete since the euro is such a strong currency.
This have an advantage for Africa? Does the CFA have an advantage for Africa?
No, never.
None whatsoever?
Not at all. That's a very big problem. And with all our grassroots mobilizations that our organization, Pan-Africanist Emergency, made these last years, there was some changes around these economical systems that are concrete victory for us. For example, speak French, les comptes d'opération, qui sont des systèmes à partir desquels le Trésor français réunissait un certain nombre de fonds qui appartenaient à la base aux pays africains. Les comptes d'opération ont été supprimés suite à nos mobilisations. Il est question que le franc CFA soit changé en nom et devienne la monnaie éco. Mais il y a encore une bataille entre des pays d'Afrique anglophone et les pays corrompus d'Afrique francophone, au sein desquels les pays d'Afrique anglophone veulent un taux de change flexible, arrimé à un panier à devises, alors que les pays d'Afrique francophone manipulés par le gouvernement français veulent un taux de change fixe arrimé à l'euro pour continuer le processus, quelque part, de spoliation de nos économies, même si ça nous donne une sensation de stabilité économique. C'est ce que l'oligarchie française essaye de nous vendre comme rêve.
In France, there used to be what was called these operating accounts that actually were funded with funds from Africa, and we managed to put a stop to these accounts thanks to our activities. So now what they want to do is that they want to rename the CFA and call it the ECHO, though it will remain the same currency. And there's currently a struggle and opposition between Anglophone and Francophone Africa, the corrupt Francophone Africa. The English-speaking part of Africa wants a flexible conversion rate that will be based on our natural resources, while the Francophones would like a flexible rate still pegged to the euro. So it's a way of giving us an illusion of economic stability. It's the dream, the fallacious dream that the French want to sell to us.
Please tell us about your activism against the CFA franc, a little bit in more detail.
When I became very well known through the TV show I was talking about a few minutes ago, I decided to organize with my organization grassroots protests against the French imperialism and the new colonialism in whole form. And CFA franc was a concrete manifestation of this new colonialism, and for us it was an opportunity to put on the table the subject of colonization in the 21st century. So we organized with my NGO, Pan-Africanist Emergency, everywhere in French-speaking Africa, grassroots contest, mobilization. I was arrested in Dakar, and that ignited all French-speaking Africa. A lot of young brother and sister when I was arrested. In fact, I was arrested because I decided to burn in front of all the camera, burn a CFA bill. And when I was incarcerated, in every French-speaking African capital, some young brother and sister take CFA franc, even if there was poor, they decided to burn it. And when the Senegalese authorities saw that, I feel that they didn't have choice to. They tried to bring peace back, and they decided to release me.